Hi, this is Chris Martinson of Peak Prosperity. It's Wednesday, August 20th, 2014. I've got a pretty big update for you here today. It starts in Ferguson, Missouri, where we saw last night again. Obviously, the protests are not quelling at this point in time. Police are trying all kinds of things. They militarized, they tear gas, they tried rubber bullets, they tried demilitarizing, they tried bringing in the more empathetic state police captain. They brought in tanks, National Guard, on and off again. Last night, though, we saw what I think is very indicative of this whole adventure. There was a police officer who pointed his weapon right at somebody who was filming him, a journalist in this case. And when the journalist said, "Hey, put your weapon down," this officer, said to this journalist, "I am going to effing kill you." Now, here's the thing. If you or I point a gun at somebody and say we're going to effing kill them, that's a very serious crime. That's a communication of a threat that would land you or I in a lot of hot water, and for good reason. Now, here's why I think this is indicative of the whole mess in Ferguson. That police officer has not been charged, and we all know that he won't be charged with anything. The police will not charge themselves with committing what are obviously crimes. Now, they are supposed to enforce the laws, not be above the laws, not interpret the laws, but enforce them. And in part, there's a lot of things fueling the resentment that we're seeing in Ferguson and Macy and other communities, but at least in part, there has to be some acknowledgement that police have been behaving above the laws. And when they have no accountability for their actions, of course they're going to behave badly. Everybody knows that people behave in accordance with what they think they can get away with in most situations. So if you know you're not going to get charged with any crimes, you're going to commit those crimes. Of course, that's part of it. That police officer felt entitled in that situation that they could do that, point their weapon right at somebody without cause, and that they could say what they said, and that they could get away with it. And they're right. But that's part of the resentment. Think how differently this whole thing in Ferguson would have gone down if, right after the shooting, the police chief, who, by the way, has demonstrated himself to be a Class A idiot from start to finish, and I believe the whole department probably reflects that, at least in part, in Ferguson. But what if he'd come out and he had said, "I understand there's been a shooting, and I understand there's some level of mistrust about the ways in which we investigate these things in this community, so here's what I'm going to do. We're going to investigate this completely. We're asking for some outside people to come in and observe that process, and we're going to pick 2 members of the community, allow the community to weigh in on that process, who are going to sit as part of the oversight board, and this is all going to be completely open and transparent. And we want to do this because your trust is important to us. We serve the community, and we're here to serve, and the way we can do that best is when we run an open and transparent process. We have nothing to hide. If a crime has been committed, charges will be filed, and that's the process we're going to follow." Wow, I think that would have done a lot. It certainly would have changed the tenor for me, but that's obviously not even remotely what we got in this situation. So the police are wondering now. I saw it in the Washington Post. There was an article. They're like, well, how are we going to stop this? Why are people still protesting? We've tried everything. No, you haven't. You have not tried the most obvious thing, which is to run an open and transparent process where the police are held to the same standards as the people they serve. No more, no less. There's laws. They either apply or they don't. Period. So that's that. I think that's pretty simple. Now, even as that sort of obvious tension's happening in the United States, over in Europe, the situation in Ukraine is still at a fever pitch. It's not getting a lot of press right now. One of the things that's really interesting is, remember, so long ago, what was that? Almost a month ago, there was a plane that was shot down, MH17, that jetliner, and the United States within hours had sent our delegate to the UN, had put John Kerry on the news saying that we knew it was Putin responsible for supplying the separatists with a weapon that was shot from separatist-controlled areas, and that was it, and we were positive. Since then, there's been this much evidence in the form of satellite photos, telemetry readouts from satellites, you name it. There's been this much evidence that was true. Now, don't forget, there were recordings that came out of the ATC Center in Kiev that were recordings between the plane and the ground control. Those were seized immediately by the Ukraine security apparatus, the SBU. Where are they? What are on those? You put those on a flash drive and you can transcribe them. It would take me personally about 10 minutes. It's been a month. Where are those recordings? And don't forget, the black boxes went to the UK to be analyzed. Again, you download the data and you release it. Where is that information? And so I'm starting to become very concerned that the United States or the Western intelligence agencies and governments have in their possession evidence and data that they simply don't want to release because it doesn't support the narrative that they want to tell. And this is becoming actually quite a source of concern. Just ask yourself this. Here we are in August 20th. How much have you read about the press to find out exactly what happened to MH17? Where's the hue and the cry for the black box recordings? Where is the hue and the cry for the ATC tapes? Where is the actual evidence of the analyzed pieces of the wreckage, which should be telling us a lot by now? So that's an interesting development. Meanwhile, there's been this back and forth around, what's Russia really doing? Has an armored column of Russian tanks actually been attacked inside Ukraine? There's a lot of fog in this war, a lot of propaganda, a lot of lies. And to understand all of this from the European perspective, we've got a nice two-parter up on our website by Alistair MacLeod, who's looking at the whole Ukraine situation with a nice historical background and a nice understanding from the European perspective. And suffice it to say that right now, there are a number of people in Europe who are growing quite concerned at the Eurocrats, as we can call them, the people out of the EU in Brussels who are basically towing the line for the United States and are following the United States lead in all things relating to Ukraine, when it's clear the United States is pursuing its own interests regionally and geopolitically across the globe, and those interests are probably not in Europe's best interest. I mean, the sanctions are really biting into Europe at this point, but let's not forget, here it is August, soon it'll be September, then October, and then guess what? Russian gas shipments across Ukraine into Europe take on really, really large significance at that point in time, and they need to continue. So if you want to find out more about that, come to the site. We've got a really excellent article, and we'll have a good discussion around what's happening there. Lots more to update you on, but that's all the time I have for this video piece. So until next time, I'm Chris Martinson of Peak Prosperity.